Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I mean, it does make the whole extension thing makes me laugh because there were so many people going into the Kyle's on the hot seat. Lynch is on the hot seat. These guys were never on the hot seat. They were never on the hot seat.
Well, we don't know that, Larry. We don't know
Well,
that. We don't know.
it's pretty likely they weren't on the hot seat. I mean, they just got long-term extensions.
Well,
They were on
hold on.
If they were on the,
Larry.
let's just say this: if they were on the hot seat, man, that's a pretty big, So now, and basically based on these 3 games at the beginning of the year, they're off the hot seat. They were never really on the hot seat. It was a made-up deal by people who wanted to come up with that narrative to try to hold people's feet to the fire and create this kind of illusion of urgency or illusion of whatever they wanted to create. But ultimately, it all came down to Jed, and Jed's never wavered. This, in Jed's mind, he screwed up with Singletary. He screwed up with not wedding Balky and Harbaugh together, so those guys never really got along. They had no real trust. He hired these guys kind of together, almost like a package deal. They've been to 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games. To me, it was crazy to think they were on the hot seat, and sure enough, it is crazy because today they now have long-term extensions into the future.
Well, let's slow down. Let's slow down. Put your pom-poms down for a second.
All right.
I love the way you bring me on here to take your victory laps, especially when you align with the organization. It's really cute. But let's have a real conversation. Okay.
All right.
Stop teeing me up. So look. Nobody.
I never said you said it, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't think you ever did say it, really.
Yeah, I never said it. But what I'm saying is that it's good to look at things for what they are now. We can chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. You yourself were on here with me talking about the possibility of how this regime would look and the consequences that would fall out if Trey Lance showed that he could be developed outside of this regime and if Brock Purdy did not produce. Did we not just have conversations like that?
Right.
All right.
Very speculative considering Trey Lance is not even anywhere close to playing and Brock Purdy's never lost, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's kind of rich that you think it's speculative now because I was trying to tell you that it was speculative in the moment, but you seem to be leaning towards the other. I got receipts, Larry. We can do this all day. So look, all I'm saying is that at the time, you were leaning into that narrative, all right? You were talking about the impending doom or if there was a hot seat. And I told you at the moment that it wasn't prudent for us to be worried about hypotheticals because that has not happened yet. What is happening now is that we had Trey Lance gone, Brock Purdy in the building, Sam Darnold as our backup, and essentially, who's the other kid? Brandon Allen as our 3rd string guy, okay? But at the time, it was real sexy to talk about the what ifs. So all we're saying is that we know that contract extensions signify that the organization is happy with the regime, right? It signifies stability because all of these guys are living out of their suitcase anyway. Everybody wants their kid to go to school for 4 years, all right, and graduate. So we get it. Extensions mean stability. Extensions mean you don't got to change your mailing address. You get to go to your regular Walmart and go to Costco. You get to go around the corner to Pig in a Pickle, right? But at the end of the day, you know that they can get the rug pulled out from under them at any minute. These things are front loaded and they're happy for what's going on now. But if the organization is not happy with what's going on and the bottom falls out, and particularly if we start looking bad around the league, you know that those guys will get golden parachutes and get shown the door. So an extension is nice, but let's stop acting like it's ironclad because it's not. It signifies that they're happy with what's going on now. But to say that they're going to see out the contract through and then we're going to ride this off into the sunset and hold hands, like that's not football. You know, we just got rid of a 3rd round pick. If the deal was good enough, John says that he trade Kyle. Like, this is business. This is signifying something to calm down and keep everything at a slow rumble. But for you to be taking a victory lap as if this is like, and for you to be taking a victory lap as if this signifies.
And once again, I'll say
he's forever the coach.
I didn't say he was forever the coach.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, man. Like, let's be balanced.
I'm just saying this line of crap, which was crap, that these guys were on the hot seat, was fucking garbage, man. They were never on the hot seat. That was made up. It was made up by people who just wanted to put them on the hot seat. Just because you want to put them on the hot seat from your perch doesn't mean that they were on the hot seat. They're only on the hot seat if Jed wanted them on the hot seat, and Jed views John and Kyle as like something that he's gotten right. And so he loves those guys. He's never expressed one iota, one word in the direction of not real excited. There's not one indication, spoken or otherwise, of Jed ever questioning either of these guys. And yet there are people that are on the record. You talk about receipts. There's people on the record.
Larry, put your name on it.
I never questioned these guys.
No, Larry.
Oh, we had a hypothetical. Wait a second. We had a hypothetical conversation.
Who are you talking about? Who are these guys?
John and Kyle.
No. Come on, walk with me.
John and Kyle were never on the hot seat. People were saying they were. Those people are fucking full of crap. That's what I'm saying.
Who are the people? Because I didn't hear this. Who are the people?
I don't need to name them. They can. I don't need to call. I got my own channel. They got their own channels. They can do what they want. They can say what they want.
So they have channels.
I'm just saying. People have said that those guys were on the hot seat. I'm here to say that was fucking bullshit. That's what I'm saying. That was fucking bullshit. They were never on the hot seat. They never were. Now, as far as our conversation about Trey Lance, I said, because I'm a believer in Trey Lance. I believe Trey Lance is going to be good. This was in the context of they traded Trey to Dallas. Wow, Dallas. And I said to you, if he goes to Dallas and he's great and Purdy craps out, these guys are going to have something to answer for. That was the context of our conversation.
That's not what you said, though. That's not what you said.
Go ahead. Tell me then what I
said. What you said is because we both agreed that we don't even think Dallas is going to be the place it happens for Trey. We both said that.
I agree. I don't think I think he'll wash out of Dallas.
All right. Now he's back to reality. All right. So we both said that. So
no, but before, if anybody's listening to this, by the way, this is not me
listening to this.
What's that?
If anybody's listening to this, everybody's listening to this.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is, you and I are not disagreeing on stuff that you said versus what I said.
No,
I'm
we're
not saying. I hope you're not thinking that I'm saying that you said this. I'm not
at all.
I'll take you off the list because we've done consistent. Saturdays for multiple months. You've never said that John and Kyle were on the hot seat. You've never said that. You've said a lot of things. We've agreed. We've disagreed. You've never said that. So let's make that perfectly clear. If somebody's jumping in, they might think Larry's trying to hold the coach's feet to the fire. No, I'm not. I'm just using this live stream, and you happen to be here to say to the people who said that these guys were on the hot seat, these guys were not on the hot seat. And it's not because anything I said or anything they've done. It's just because Jed loves them, and Jed was not on the verge of firing those guys. They've been to, come on, Coach. They've been to 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games.
Why are you talking about Jed loving them?
Because it's clear, because I know Jed loves them. I just talked to people the other day who are like, man, Jed's so proud that he picked John and Kyle and linked them together. See, Jed picked Harbaugh, and he stayed with Balky, but the big problem was Balky wasn't wed to Harbaugh, and more importantly, Harbaugh wasn't wed to Balky. And 2 days after Harbaugh signed his deal, he went back to Jed and said, I want Michael Lombardi as my GM. And unfortunately, that little bit of news got back to Trent Baalke, and that's why those guys, even though they had a lot of success, they never had a trust. So when he cleared that thing out, and then there's Chip and Tom Sula, those train wrecks, when he finally decided to get it right, he said, you know what? The coach and the GM is the central relationship in any organization. It's vital that these guys come in and be together and not try to be surviving one another. So that's how we got the current regime. Jed loves these guys. That's all I've said through time. The only thing I talked about pressure on the organization is You trade Trey to Dallas, and if he goes to Dallas and becomes a franchise quarterback, and Brock Purdy craps out, and we had that speculative conversation down the road, there would be hell to pay. And I still actually believe that if there, even though despite these contracts, that if Trey does go to Dallas and kicks butt and becomes a franchise quarterback, the next Roger Staubach or whatever, Troy Aikman, and they win Super Bowls with Trey Lance in Dallas, Purdy craps out, and the Niners never get to the top of the mountaintop, yeah, there will be a lot of unhappy Niner fans, and they'll be pointing the finger at Kyle and John. That's all I was saying.
Okay. I mean, well,
I'm not pointing at you. I'm just saying there were an awful lot of people who were saying that these guys were on the hot seat. And my point is, I never believed they were on the hot seat. And I just, potentially they could be at some point, but it ain't now. And it ain't anytime, they haven't been on the hot seat recently.
Right.
But that was a big talk of this offseason. These guys, Kyle, John, it's like, no.
Okay.
I'm not taking the victory lap. I'm not taking the victory lap on their decision. I'm just saying, the people that I've talked to around the team say that Jed loves these guys, and they were never going anywhere. Shanahan previously, by the way, signed a 6-year deal in 2020 through 2025.
Do you have the details of this, by the way?
I don't have the terms, but what I've heard is that Kyle's now making, what I've heard, now I don't know if this is accurate, making roughly $13 million per, which would make him, beautiful. I don't know, who's the highest paid coach?
I don't.
Is that the highest paid?
Can I ask? Can I talk to Google on your phone on the show?
Yeah.
I was about to ask it. Hey Google, who's the highest paid coach in the NFL?
On the website sportskeeda.com, they say Bill Belichick is the highest paid coach in United States professional sports, according to Sportico, at $20 million annually. Do you want a little more context?
No, I'm good. It's Bill.
Wow, $20 million a year for Belichick. Now, from what I've heard, he might be on the hot seat, even though he's the highest paid coach, because the Patriots have not played well post Tom Brady. But I don't know that, and I would be shocked by that. But I've heard that from my buddies in the New England area. Mm-hmm. But Lynch and Shanahan, the Niners are 3-0. They're 55-46 over 7 seasons, 6-3 in the playoffs. Shanahan previously, as I said, 6-year deal through 2025. He signed it in 2020. So he had 2 more years on his deal, and they extended him. How long, I don't know. But they joined the organization in February of 2017, and since that point, they've won 2 division titles. They've appeared in 3 NFC title games, and they've had 1 Super Bowl appearance. And during
Can I be the drama real quick? Can I be the drama?
Yeah.
How much of this, because of the timing, right? This is why I'm asking this question. But how much of this is Jed not caring about championships, as he always loves to say, and he cares about asses in the seats? How much is this?
It's a business.
How much of this is Jed worrying about what he's got going on outside of this organization and making sure that he's just circling the wagons to make sure that his chief asset is at least locked away and handled? Like, did John and Kyle kind of get this by proxy just because of calamity that's happening? Or did they truly get this based off of merit? Because the reason why this is shocking is because
what's shocking? That they got extensions?
That they got the extension on week 3 of the season.
Oh, okay.
Like that, you don't think that the timing of that is a little weird?
It's a good question. It's a good question.
Team? Like, and that's not a hater question. That's not me hating on the organization, but that's just like a thoughtful.
There's
analysis.
A lot of people around you, Coach. A lot of people who agree with you, I should say. I put out, hey, Jed got this one right, and some of my followers on Twitter were like, hey, he should, Eddie, who's always used as the model, and people always kind of assume they know what Eddie would do. But a couple of the themes, one of the
Eddie
themes
wouldn't
that
have
came,
done it.
well, one of the themes that came up was that Eddie would have made him win the Super Bowl first.
He would have made him win it. Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, I told you this months ago. I said Eddie would have fired him by now. You know what I'm saying? I said that.
I don't agree. Here, can I express why I don't agree? Eddie had in some weird ways. This has the exact. It's like almost like a repeat of the DeBartolo era at the beginning. Eddie D hired Joe Thomas. And I talked to Eddie D about this years later. I said, Eddie, why Joe Thomas? Talk to me about that. Joe Thomas, because he was recommended to Eddie, and Joe Thomas was a Youngstown, Ohio guy. And Eddie's a Youngstown, Ohio guy. And so they hired Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas made the terrible O.J. Simpson trade that gave up a bunch of draft picks, including one that became Joe Cribbs. And things were going wrong. The Niners were struggling. They were, going to multiple head coaches. They were stammering around in the dark. Finally, Eddie, believe it or not, has a friend who's a guy that I know well, the great Ron Barr, broadcaster, who was doing Stanford football. Ron and Eddie were friends. This is a true story. I cannot believe this is a true story, but it absolutely is. Mm-hmm. Ron and Eddie were friends. Ron was doing Stanford football play-by-play. Ron was first-hand seat for Bill Walsh. Ron recommended to Eddie, you got to interview Bill Walsh. Mm-hmm. Okay? He went and interviewed Bill Walsh and hired Walsh and brought in Walsh and McVay after the failed run of Joe Thomas. So, Eddie first went to Joe Thomas and whoever Joe Thomas hired as the head coach, then went to Walsh in the late 70s with John McVay, and the rest is history. But it wasn't like Walsh didn't have rough spots as well. The team went 3-6 in 1982 during the strike year, and they had six. At that point, though, of course, they'd already won a Super Bowl. They also went 2-14 the first 2 years, and he stayed with Walsh and McVay. Interestingly enough, Eddie D sent Ron Barr, the broadcaster, after Super Bowl 23, a package with 3 Super Bowl rings in it for thanking him for recommending Bill Walsh, who had won at that point 3 Super Bowl rings. He gave Ron Barr 3 Super Bowl rings, and it's not like a story that I heard. I know Ron. I saw the letter. I saw the package, and I've seen the rings.
It's verified.
It's verified. And I've seen Eddie on Ron's show, face to face, hugging him and talking about why he did it. And it's not like speculation. It's fact. And so Walsh and McVay became Eddie's guys, and there were many times, and I've talked to Carmen Policy about this. There were many times that Eddie, who's very passionate and had very high standards, was really at wit's end with Walsh and at times wanted Bill out. But always, cooler heads prevailed, and they stayed together, and they found a way to win 3 titles and set up this dynasty, and eventually Seifert would win that 4th. And then eventually they would win a 5th. So Seifert's got the 2 and Walsh has got the 3. So that's kind of the story of the Niners head coaching. Now, Eddie, or I should say Jed, basically made all the mistakes he could. He responded to a very passionate Singletary after a Week 16 win in the locker room and announced him as the head coach after he was the interim coach, and that was a mistake. And obviously, he made a number of mistakes along the way, and who he hired, Mike Nolan, and you name it. Eventually found Harbaugh, but then made a huge mistake in that Harbaugh and Balky weren't linked, and Harbaugh insulted Parag and insulted Jed, and caused a lot of fractures from within. And they showed him the door. That was probably not a bright move because he was a great coach. Then he brings in Tom Sula, disaster. Chip Kelly, disaster. And then he found Shanahan. The only thing I'll say is that the revenue in the NFL during this period where Jed has been running the team has jumped to such a level that he was able to pay off Tom Sula and all of his coaches and Chip Kelly and all of his coaches and really spend like over $20 million on failed regimes to wipe the slate clean every time. If the NFL didn't have that kind of revenue, he probably couldn't have done it. But now he's got Kyle and John. He loves John as the face of the franchise. He believes in Kyle's offense. He believes in John now as an executive. And this is the dynamic duo.